Hello Whisky fans, and thank you for joining me on December the 14th. So we are truly past the halfway mark now on our premium whisky advent calendar. So that's a little bit sad, but we've had some great whisky already. And you would like to think that the guys at Master of Malt, they're not going to leave it to random chance as to what order these are in. So hopefully they've saved some of the really good stuff for the second half. Let's find out. Door number 14. That was close. That opened a little bit easier than I expected it to, but I didn't see anything. Right. Where is my glass? Bear with me, I've done it again. Okay, here we go. Label away. Break the seal. That didn't feel that well sealed, but hopefully it was. Clean glass. Let's get that out of sight, and let's get this in the glass and nosed and tasted. So immediately I'm going to say probably another Speyside Dram. There's been a lot of Speyside Drams in this calendar. I'm not sure what percentage in total, but I guess a lot of the premium, well-aged single malts maybe tend to be Speysides. Well, the majority of distilleries in Scotland are in Speyside, so I guess there's a bit of logic there. So again, smells old, not incredibly old. Again, from the first sniff on the nose, I'm going to say probably around 18. So I'm getting lots of sherry, lots of sweet sherry, and lots of Christmas cake, a little bit of spice in the sherry. Very sweet, lots of maltiness. It's actually quite a Christmas cakey dram, this one. That combination of the sherry and the spice, the maltiness, the sweetness. Also getting some marzipan notes in there, sort of Christmas cake, Dundee cake. Quite nutty, can't remember if I've said that, but also it's not too dry. I'd say it's got more of a challenging, slightly drier nose than a lot of Speyside whisky does. I think that the ABV on this one does seem a little bit higher than a lot of the others. I'm going to go for probably 46%. Is it a craft presentation? I'm going to say there's a good chance it could be. Doesn't look like there's a huge amount of colouring in there. Considering how sherried it seems on the nose, I'd say that is about what you would expect for a whisky that smells like this. Another way that we could be more certain that this is a craft presentation is if you drop some water in there and it goes cloudy when you drop it below 46%. That gives you some good hints that it's probably non-chill filtered. Might do that in a minute, but not now, because I think this one at the full strength, which I believe is 46, is just about where you want it to be. Slight fizziness, slight effervescence on the nose, a little bit of a sort of sherbet, sugary, confectionery note. And again, descending into, when you nose it for a few seconds, it fades into a sort of sweet, nutty, old maltiness. Let's see how it tastes. I'm sure this is going to be a good one. So very good, maybe a little bit less impressive than the nose, but lots of power, definitely Speyside, or possibly a Highland distillery that has a Speyside style, because there are a couple. Lots of appliness, lots of really mature maltiness, quite a bit of sherry, maybe not quite as much sherry as came through on the nose. There is definitely a drier, more challenging side to this whisky. It's not your simple sort of Glenlivet style, easy drinking, creamy orchard fruits. It's got all the hallmarks of a Speyside whisky, sort of classic Speyside, but it's not got that creaminess. It's got more of a slight saltiness, slight salinity, and also more of a slightly hard cereal malted barley note. Let's have another sip. I do think that the palate is ever so slightly disappointing, a little bit lacking compared to the nose. I wondered if it was just that first sip that wasn't sitting quite right, but I do think that it's a very good whisky, but it's a little bit more of a nosing whisky than a tasting whisky. Which sounds like a little bit of a strange thing to say, but I'm sure all of you whisky aficionados out there will understand exactly what I mean. Tasting notes on the palate, getting quite an appliness, quite sweet, a little bit of golden syrup, quite cakey, and some of those subtle, spicy, malty flavours on the late palate that matched up with the nose. So what do I think this could be? So it's definitely, I'm going to go with Speyside, I'm going to go with 46%, and I don't think it's anything like Glenlivet or Tamnavoul, and it's not those stereotypical Speysiders, but it is, I think it's a craft presentation. So what have we got there? Glenfarclas is the obvious one when you think of a proper craft presentation of a slightly more adult, slightly more mature, challenging Speyside. It's kind of like the Glenlivet for people that really appreciate their whisky. Could definitely be, I mean, what age statement would this be? I wouldn't go as far as the 21 or the 25. I think this is probably going to be the 18 if it is a Glenfarclas. Although saying that, Glenfarclas 15 is a pretty solid dram. But I don't think they're going to put the Glenfarclas 15 in this calendar. I think if it's a Glenfarclas, I'd probably go with the 18. But there are so many Speyside distilleries that could really trip me up here, because if this was an 18-year-old Manic Moor or a Glentockers or even a Craig Ellicky, because they've rebranded and a lot of their whiskies have changed, would I pick that out? Probably not, because Speyside is a huge category. Lots of nuttiness on the nose. Really intense sugary sweetness, nuttiness, oiliness, walnuts, marzipan. Let's have one more sip and then we'll see what we've got. Again, I do think palate is noticeably lacking compared to the nose. Does that fit with the profile of Glenfarclas? Probably does a little bit. Glenfarclas is a great distillery, but I do kind of remember their whiskies being a little bit more for nosing than tasting. Let's see what we've got. Glenfarclas, so I got the distillery right, but it is the 21-year-old. So I didn't think that seemed as old as 21, to be honest. But also, and I'd completely forgotten this, unless this has changed recently, but it's actually not a craft whisky, it's at 43%. So I think perhaps I made an educated guess and got lucky and got the distillery right, but I think maybe the fact that the ABV was that little bit lower maybe knocked it down a few pegs and made me guess slightly low on the age. That's my excuse anyway. But either way, Glenfarclas 21-year-old is a real shame that that's not a craft presentation. Unless that's a typo on the label, but it's probably not. So yeah, Glenfarclas, expected better from you. And that probably explains as well why the nose was really good and the palate was not, still really good, but not quite as good. Because I've said before that when you knock the ABV down on a whisky, quite often the nose is intact, but the actual taste, the palate suffers more than the nose. So I would expect if this was at 46%, then I would have probably liked the palate as much as I did the nose, which is quite a lot. Anyway, lovely whiskey, and a very festive, very Christmassy, Christmas cake themed whiskey as well. I look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.